Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and this video is going to be episode 1 of a new show that I'm doing called ChoseN's Corner, where once every week or two, I bring on a guest or a couple guests just, to have a casual conversation, whether it's fellow content providers or a game developer or a top player, just somebody to kind of mainly talk about Raid for now, but also gaming in general, and just kind of have a little podcast / casual discussion just to kind of talk about our current thoughts on the game and gaming in general. So since this is episode 1, I would really appreciate your feedback, whether it's positive or negative, down in the comment section so that I can improve and do these better in the future. But for episode 1, joining me is going to be a fellow content provider, Kizzle, and I'm excited to have a conversation with him and kind of get his perspective on a few things. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and let's get into it. Alrighty, so here we are, episode 1 of Chosen's Corner, and I am going to be kicking off this show with Kizzle. What's up, man? Go ahead and introduce yourself.
What's up, everybody? No, thanks for having me on, man. I like Chosen's Corner. I didn't realize that was going to be the name.
I'm unveiling it live.
Yeah, well, that was a good move on your part because that was you saw the impact that it had. I'm sure.
That's right.
Cool. That's cool. It's catchy.
That's right. You gotta have an alliteration. If you're gonna make a name, it has to be an alliteration. So you gotta go with a double C.
Yeah. I picked that up on Bob's Burgers, believe it or not.
That's right. There you go. Yeah, exactly. All right. So what do? You do tell the people out there what you do in terms of like content and kind of what your style is and all that.
Yeah, so I do Raid Shadow Legends content, and it's on YouTube. And I started doing Twitch a little over a week ago. Twitch has gone really well. And my focus has really been more in-game. I'm trying to do a little bit more like of mid to in-game, and in the beginning, I think I was almost solely focused on clan boss strategy. And I was really excited about faction wars and, doing strategy and tactics for faction wars. And then, faction wars came out and kind of went to plan B pretty quickly.
That'll be something I'm sure we touch on during this episode. But thanks for sharing that. I've always enjoyed your content. I'm excited to have you on to kind of talk here. So I guess first, let's go over your opinion on the event. I already did a video on this yesterday, kind of laid out my opinions for like 10 minutes on the event. But what do you kind of think? And when I say the event, I'm talking about this kind of, it's kind of a type of event we've never seen before in Raid with this, 10,000 points required to get a Void Epic. So what's kind of like your first impressions on this?
My first impressions certainly are not good. The only logical place that I can kind of deduce myself into would be that they're testing the water. They're trying to find like a ceiling of like, how crazy they can get, and I don't know, for me, like if you're going to do that, you should install thresholds, like if you're continually trying to find the ceiling, then you should look at how much how much loss is actually present. So, if you're not getting, let's just arbitrarily say 20% of your sales, amount comes in, and then you push the ceiling up a little bit higher and only 15% comes in, but it's still more money, then you should look at that as a 5% loss, and I think it's just the finance person in me that thinks that way. But, I don't know, I have a really strong background in business and finance, and I can't figure out what Plarium's doing. It makes me nervous.
Did you watch my video from yesterday? Because you basically said exactly what I said.
I didn't yet. No, I need to.
No, it's okay. But yeah, I basically said this is a heat check by Plarium. They're you know how like when a basketball player makes 5 or 6 shots in a row and they just start shooting from everywhere. They're just seeing how hot they are. I said in my video that Plarium, everything's going good. They're making money. Their player base is active. They're just gonna throw something wild out there and see what percentage of people will go for this and how far they can push that envelope. That's what I think.
Yeah, and that's I'm sure it works really well in basketball. I don't know. I'm 5 foot, absolutely nothing at the end of the day, so I'm not very good at it. But in business though, that's kind of a bad strategy.
Yeah, we both work in finance, so yeah, I enjoy hearing your perspective on this. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. But you're supposed to, so we talk about like a price increase ceiling. I won't get too boring with this. Don't worry. You know, but like a price increase ceiling, because I work mostly in commodities, right? And the problem with commodities is they're either globally set pricing, which is another can of worms, but then there's the market set pricing, right? And you have to be really careful of diminishing returns. So the best way to do it is to have monoscheduled price increases, like to basically that they're going to hurt, but just let your customer base know when they're going to happen so they can brace themselves. You know, and there's just none of that. There's no sign of stopping, you know, and unfortunately, when you leave that sort of window open without thresholds, without things like that to keep yourself in check, things go poorly. And there's really phenomenal business models of people that did things differently in video gaming. Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic, is that it? SWTOR?
I think so, yeah. Yep, I think that sounds right. I never played it, but that sounds right.
Well, they went from being a monthly charge game, right? And look this up if you guys don't believe me. This is an awesome, awesome read. But they went from being a monthly charge game, subscription-based, went free to play with loot boxes, and increased their overall earnings.
Oh, 100. I've been saying this for years. Like the days of paying $60 to $80 for a game, you're just like, okay, so I probably would have never downloaded Raid if it cost $10. I would have, I don't want to pay $10 for an app and then end up not liking it. But because it was free, I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. And then here I am, you know, spending all this money on Raid. So,
yeah, that's the gacha aspect, right?
Exactly. The days of expecting people to pay for a game up front, I think is so short-sighted. And I said it for years in Diablo 3. I was like, you know, put the game out for free and find a way to monetize in game with selling hero slots and things, even if it's not pay to win. I just think the League of Legends is kind of what started that all, right? Like 8-9 years ago.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you have so many examples to look at, and it's something that drives me crazy. You know, like on the consulting side of things, when I work in like finance or business, you know, like I'll go in and like one of my first questions to people will be like, okay, well, what does your competition do? You know, like as soon as we run into like a problem, all right, so you need to get your pricing. What's your competition do at times like this? I don't know. You're like, okay, well, you need maybe a lot more help than I can bring, you know, because if you don't know that, then you're kind of in trouble here. And there's so many successful games to look at for Plarium. I mean, there's a massive amount, and you know, you'd like to think. I mean, I had a conversation with the creative developer this week, and it's shocked me their awareness of what these other games are doing. Like there was a point where I thought I was telling them about it, and then they started telling me about it. You know, and I was like, so where's the disconnect? You know, and I have no idea what the answer to that is. But I mean, to your original point, there's a ton of different business models that you can go down. You know, you can do like what Fortnite does and just have the aesthetics. You know, I mean, their earning generation is massive. You know, but what I always thought would happen is when Aristocrat Global bought Plarium, that they were either going to use, and this is kind of what I'm afraid of a little bit, they were going to use the free cash flow to buy more companies because Plarium's free cash flow is very high, right? Or they were going to scale Plarium, and the scale and the integration made probably more sense to their shareholders. It's really hard to buy a company just basically treat it like an ATM. You know, shareholders aren't normally on cool with that. They want a vision. They want to know you're going in a direction. And you can't mislead shareholders because the word for that in the U.S. is actually called fraud. Yeah.
Ponzi schemes, and
Yeah. So you know, one thing I have learned though is sometimes when you're trying to figure it all out, you're missing the fact that maybe they just don't have it figured out. You know, and I hope that's not the case because you and I are tied pretty closely to them right now. If that ship starts to sink, I think you know, Chosen and Kizzle are probably some of the first two to go down with it. So.
I think I feel confident in our ability to figure it out and navigate, you know, when something like that, if it were to happen. But yeah, it would definitely be rough if Plarium just flushed Raid down the toilet somehow. It would definitely be not optimal. But I always wonder, like, there has to be a reason for it. Like, they have to have access to certain statistics and analytics on the back end that we don't have access to. You know, they see the numbers. They see, like, when we did this event, we made this much revenue that week. When we did this event, we did this much revenue that week. So like, they can't be stupid. They have to know you know, what's making them money and what isn't. So there has to be a reason behind it. That, you know, what company is just going to intentionally tank their own game?
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, and if you're cool with continuing to go down the business route, I mean, we can get into the weeds on. I don't know how much it'll improve your viewer longevity and your own analytics. It might bore some people, but you know, the long and the short of it is usually they're executing a plan, right?
Yeah.
The company I used to work for did this a lot. They had a plan. They really did. They had a plan that a consultant came in and said, you guys have to do this. It was a terrible, terrible plan, right? And everything they did had to check those boxes, right? And unfortunately, you know, they weren't really sitting there and pressure testing it. They weren't saying, okay, is the plan working? And then what scared me the most is, you know, if you don't have good analytics, right? And I mean, I've worked for billion-dollar companies before, you know, in revenue that had no analytics, right? So I mean, don't just assume that a big company has good analytics. It's very expensive to get good analytics, right? So if you don't have them, there's really no way to pressure test yourself and say, "Oh, am I making good decisions? Are these decisions working?" And then you get this this cool buy-in and this megalomania sometimes, you know, and you know, if you're sticking to the plan hard enough, maybe it'll eventually work. You know, and it's very hard. It takes a different you know, tier of business person to say, okay, I just did that. I need to check this from 15 different angles and just make sure that I'm not making a mistake. I don't run into a lot of folks like that in the professional sector. You know, most folks I know are making their decisions based off of buzzwords and trends.
Yeah, and, it really is surprising. I've worked, you know, I currently work for $1 billion company, and yeah, I'm surprised at, you know, some of that stuff as well.
Yeah, and then the other thing with analytics is, you know, I mean, look at, like, you know, so for us that do YouTube videos, you know, YouTube's great. You know, it's probably my favorite thing about it is you walk in on day one, you have analytics, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of them though, and sometimes you feel like you're looking at the right one. But I bet you if you asked 100 different YouTube users what their number one analytic was, you would probably get 12 different answers, at least.
Well, right? let's test it out. What do you think the number one analytic is to look at? We'll see if we agree.
Views in 24 hours of posting.
Okay.
What do you think it is?
Probably monetized views in the last 48 hours.
Okay. So, you know, similar but different.
Yeah.
You know, similar but different. And that's one of the challenges, right? Is they may be looking at something like that, and, you know, based on their analytic that they like, or the analytics that they like, you know. And then you'll have a lot of folks that especially, you know, like this gets into like more of occupational psychology and whatnot, but you'll have some people that are just drivers, you know, and analytics be damned. They'll have them on their desk. They'll pretend to go through them, but they're going to stick to their plan. You know, could be dealing with some of that as well, you know, but all in all, it's a very long answer to your question of what I think of the tournament. The reality of the tournament is I am very much concerned with it, because it's like, you know, I feel like we're on a very consistent apology tour, you know, and I'm waiting for it to end.
Yeah, you know, it's like you can only... it's like the same thing as a relationship. If you're constantly apologizing to your significant other every day, eventually they're going to be like, screw it, you know?
Yeah. And there's, you know, I mean, there's so many, and this is what scares me. There's so many new gacha games, and there's so many like well-structured ones, you know? We've been talking about, I think we even talked about a little bit like last night, like Epic 7. You know, when you play a game like that, that's been around for about a year, that's very well structured, you know, it's shocking, and it kind of makes you revert back to like, where is the success of Raid? And I think it's just in the visual, like in the aesthetic models of Raid. That's what's holding it together right now. And
yeah, because they really caught a section of the market where like all of these gacha games are like cartoony and based on anime, and then Raid comes in and the champions look like badass. Like, I don't know, you know, they look like more real, you know, not like cartoony and like kiddish, like a Disney movie almost.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the way to describe it. So that, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the visual, like one of my first YouTube videos, I did a review of Raid Shadow Legends. And yeah,
Okay.
I gave it a 10 out of 10 for aesthetics. I was like, this game in terms of a mobile game for like a hero builder, the visuals are amazing.
Yeah, yeah. They really are. And the only game I've seen, and this is probably a good lesson of this somewhere, but like Age of Magic, for me, actually is a more aesthetically, appealing game than Raid Shadow Legends. It's a beautiful game. Similar character models, very smooth, detailed backgrounds and stuff. But Age of Magic is not as like true to the gacha genre. It's more of like that, hero collector, like you have to assemble shards to build champions or whatever, versus just rolling and getting a champion. So it's but Age of Magic, like I played that, and yeah, I mean it had me for a little bit, but when it died very, very hard for me. And it was not because frankly of bad decision, it's because of lack of content. And Plarium checks that box sometimes too with Raid, where the content's just not coming out fast enough.
Yeah, I think, and as you've been talking, I was kind of going over Age of Magic kind of photos and stuff on screen here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they released champions. I think they prioritize releasing champions too much instead of new content. Because they keep slamming these patches with 16 champions, 14 new champions, and it's like, and then none of them are like sought after. None of, like, I guess Vizier Ovelis or whatever is the one they released that's like really sought after. But other than that, they released like 16 champions, and it's like, all it's doing is like diluting the pool of getting the champions that I actually want. I think they would be much better served to focus on the Void Tower, to focus, to flush out faction wars, I think, focusing on flushing out the game instead of just slamming us up to 600 champions, I think would be the better route, personally. Do you agree?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think it goes back to what we said a minute ago. Somebody has a plan, and they're sticking to that plan, and I think that becomes a little bit more evident in what you're saying right there. Because I mean, you should put something out, test it for a little bit, go back, review it, take your feedback, and then tweak it as necessary. They have the opportunity to do that across the board with a ton of things right now. They're just not doing it. Instead, it's more new champions and more new champions and more new champions, and not even meta changing ones. Like, at least if a new champion came out and now Faction Wars is doable, okay, that can do something. But it would have to be such a we're being really hypothetical. It'd have to be like the God champion to do Faction Wars, right? But that would be interesting. And again, I mean, you are kind of also diluting the pool of summons at this point.
Yeah.
When you put in the champions that aren't going to be new meta or aren't really good. So, yeah.
I haven't gotten your opinion on Faction Wars really since we've been talking about that. Do you do it every day? Do you
No. No, I don't do it at all.
Really?
I did. No. I came out with like a rant video on it, and I was surprised because normally, like, I kind of make the joke sometimes that, tier lists and rant videos are like instant, trending videos. And I try not to do both. But the rant videos, like, I really do try to avoid, because it's like my natural disposition is to end up in a rant,
I'm the same way. I try to avoid like making rant videos or clickbait type stuff.
Yeah. And I think it's a good thing to do across the board. But, I did a Faction Wars rant. And what really made me do it was I was talking to Habits, and, 2 weeks before Faction Wars, I mean, Habits was a moderator, so he knew when Faction Wars was coming out. He, went through, picked out a team for each faction. He had a 6 million player power account, geared them all, had them already, was just theory crafting like crazy. And then like a week into Faction Wars, I messaged him. I was like, "How are you liking this, man?" He was like, "I'm not doing it." He's like, "It sucks, dude." And I was like, ugh, that's like, and I knew I had felt the same way. And then I used to talk to Hades a lot too. And I messaged Hades, Ala Gallifrey. I said, "Are you doing Faction Wars?" He was like, "No." And then I did the rant video, because I was like, man, if the folks that were waiting on the new content, like aggressively waiting on the new content, aren't going to do it, then that's a really big fumble for me. And that was exactly what kind of led me to do the rant video. I did the rant video, and I got like a little bit of pushback. People were like, "Well, your thing's supposed to be in-game content, so you should do Faction Wars content. And I was like, all right. So then like I actually did like a handful of Faction Wars videos, and you can almost tell what I'm doing because I just didn't like doing it, you know, but I did like kind of my best to get through it. And then after I think my fourth one, I finally got like that comment where somebody was like, why are you wasting your time on this? And I was like, okay, I'm going to take that comment right there and move forward. I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah, I unfortunately I agree with you. I think Faction Wars was a huge fumble.
Yeah.
But it sounds like they know that, and they are going to work on making it more realistic and more attainable. Because like my theory was always when Faction Wars came out, I was like, this like proves to me that they're gonna release 7-star champions, because there's no way you can expect people to be able to complete this. It's impossible. So the only way that you could progress far enough to complete Faction Wars is if they released 7-star champions that were just that much stronger.
Yeah. I thought that for a bit too, and then like I mean, your mod as well. We asked, you know, Siri right away in mod chat, and when she was like, "No, there's no plans for doing that," I was like, "Well, then what did you do this for?" You know, it's like,
yeah, I don't.
Do you have any plans at all here? And then like, she did like one of her Q&As in general chat, and somebody asked her like about Faction Wars, and she was like, "It's tuned just right," and I was like, "What?" At that point, I just kind of gave up. I was like, if they think it's tuned just right, then at that point, I kind of was like, maybe they're just listening to the wrong folks. You know, like, I don't know. Because I mean, I was not saying that. I don't think any of the content producers were saying that Faction Wars was going really well. I think we either weren't covering it or we were talking about it like negatively.
I would give Faction Wars a 2 out of 10.
Oh yeah. I would give it. Yeah, you might be being generous there.
I do it every day just because, you know me, I'm a hoarder. I want to get as many glyphs as possible. So even if I can only do like level 7, I'll do it every day. But yeah, I wish they made it like a second campaign almost, like where you have to accrue the stars and do certain levels. I was hoping that they would have made it like something to tie in with like your friends or your clan or something in some sort of way, and you also can't refresh your keys. I don't know. Yeah. There was, you know, it seemed to me like the can't refresh your keys was always a way to further monetize it by, okay, well, you can buy your keys today, you know? That to me was kind of an obvious cash grab, you know? And then when the content started going over really poorly, that shocked me too. I remember like, I think 2 weeks into Faction Wars, I asked Ranger, you know, how the feedback was going. I was expecting him to be getting bombarded with bad feedback. He was like, it's going great. Faction Wars is awesome. And I was like, whoa, okay. Yeah, but what are they gonna what are they gonna say? You know, like I love Ranger and Cirilla and all them. But like that's what they're gonna say. They're not gonna be like Faction Wars is trash.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
They work for the company, and they gotta kind of toe that line of spinning it in a positive way. So I don't blame them for that. And it sounds like at least they're good. I pointed this out in my video. They did specifically say significantly less difficult. They didn't just say, hey, we're gonna look at balancing Faction Wars. They said we're gonna make it significantly less difficult.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'm interested to see what they do with it, but you know, I hope it doesn't business model to because somebody said this to me a while back, and it kind of like, hey, Katie, can you close all the way? Sorry, my wife has like been in and out of this room. You might have to edit, but my wife's been in and out of this room for 10 minutes now and keeps leaving the door open, and then my dog runs in and my kid runs in. So
that's all good. No worries.
But no, Faction Wars and Plarium. I agree with you. I mean, their official stance is their official stance. I think maybe a better official stance would have been, you know, we're looking for input. You tell us how it is instead of it's tuned just right. Because when you say it's tuned just right, you send a really muddy message, because then a week, 3 weeks, a month later, you come back and you say, oh, we made a mistake there. We overtuned it. Well, it's a very inconsistent message, you know? So now you're kind of messing with your player base a little bit. They're losing confidence in your ability to assess your own product. That's a problem. And then the other aspect of that is when people get confused, they typically go straight to the worst case scenario. And when you're not clear, things can get confusing. So somebody said this to me, and I'm not really one to think that there's a big plan. I usually think that things are just happening day to day, generally speaking, in all situations. But somebody said, what if they're doing faction wars in all content, right, to fleece the whales, right, for the first 60 days, and then nerf the content so that everybody can do it. You know, like basically milk all the whales dry and then nerf it, and you know that's their actual business plan moving forward. It's not a good business plan, but if they were doing that, a lot of this starts to make a lot of sense.
I don't know though, because even for whales, like me and you are probably technically almost whales, and faction wars doesn't really make sense for us.
I agree. I mean, but you know, it could still be a swing and a miss operating under that platform. You know, the content. Think about it this way: if the prizes were better in faction wars, you would see a lot more whaling on it, in my opinion. You know, I mean, the content isn't necessarily doable, but the biggest problem is, I think, and this is just my my belief looking at it, but if the prizes were like really, really, really good, you know, then this would be a pretty simple thing. You would, in my opinion, you would see more stage 21 clears because people would be going hard trying to get the prizes. But I mean, you're going to have to ascend, you know, 2 or 3 6 stars. You're going to have to book them out. You're going to have to get them in all new gear. You're going to have to farm stun gear, you know, farm, you know, stun gear and savage gear and, you know, all kind of stuff that you probably don't already have, you know, a strong stockpile of. And you're going to have to do it over and over and over and over again for faction wars. When you start doing all that math, you're like, I'm going to do this for legendary tome? Like,
yeah, it's,
you know,
it doesn't make sense. The only thing that makes sense is to just kind of farm the highest level you can on auto and call it good.
That's that's the move. Honestly, I should be doing that. And I do have a question for you. So, do you actually play the game very much anymore, or are you just pure content all the time?
Me?
Yeah.
I play the game all the time, probably 12 hours a day.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't get to play it very much anymore. Like, I get almost all of my information from, like, I usually have enough time to like verify like whatever it is I'm looking at, but like I don't get like my dailies done or any of that stuff. Like I get my clan boss runs done usually. That's about it.
Man,
that's it.
I come from the best clan in Diablo 3, and where I'm used to just grinding like until you're gonna die. Like, so since the day I started playing Raid, I have never not gotten my dailies. Never. Not
I think that
one
might
day.
be a little bit your personality though, because you're a little bit like, I don't want to use the word impulsive, but let's say thorough. We'll
let's be nice. Be nice. It's episode 1, all right? Don't trash me already.
But I mean, are you sitting there like, you know, like, is that something that happens with you? Like, are you like laying in bed like, oh my god, I didn't do my dailies, and then like you're up and you're like, I'm gonna do my dailies now. And then you feel better about it?
I wouldn't say that psycho, but yeah, but like if you notice, you won't find I probably have like 150 videos. And all of them show me playing Raid. You will never see me above max energy or above max arena tokens or anything. Like, I make sure my account is constantly generating resources. I do not let myself max out.
No, that's good. Yeah, that's the way you want to be. I am not that way. I am not that organized. We'll just say that, you know, it's you're very organized. You know. You're assimilating the data really well. You're scheduling yourself. You know, I mean, you're on top of things. You know, and I'm just a mess. Probably a better way to put it.
I wouldn't say that. It's just a different style of gamer. I get a thrill out of being as efficient as possible. So that's kind of my style. My theory crafting is, you know, how can I do my resources as efficient as possible and make sure I'm always generating and progressing every day as much as I possibly can.
You know, I was probably like that when I played WoW, right?
Yeah.
And you know, Perma and I are like best friends in real life, and I actually met Perma through mobile games, right? And I've been playing mobile games with Perma for between 4 and 5 years, you know, and we probably have been on 6 or 7 games together. And Perma, like, he's very competitive, but he's kind of got this perspective like, I can't be on the game all the time. But I can afford to go whale whenever I'm not on it as much as I want. So I'm just going to be a whale, and everything's going to add up in the end. And that's like really rubbed off on me, unfortunately for my bank account mostly, because I can't afford it. Like he can't, Perma will be like, oh, I didn't have any time this week, I was too busy to log in, so I just logged in and bought all the packs. And you're like,
somewhere there's a Polarium, you know, employee twiddling their fingers and saying, yes, it's all going according to plan.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So but no, that's yeah, and another buddy of mine said that to me one time, because like I was talking about, you know, how much time we used to put into WoW. Actually, you know, it was a buddy of mine asking me if I would go back and play Classic, and I was like, dude, I won't even install it. Like, you know, I rated in vanilla, I cleared Nax, you know, which was pretty difficult to do. It was a 6-7 day a week rating schedule.
I've never played 1 minute of WoW in my life, so.
Well, to kind of put it in the most normal terms, I raided from 6 p.m. until 1 a.m. Monday through Friday, and then from noon usually until midnight on Saturdays.
Raiding is like farming?
No, raiding would be like going through a dungeon, and it's 40 people at that time. Now I think it's like 25 or 20, but back in vanilla WoW it was 40 people, and you all had to go together and like kill bosses in a very organized fashion, working together as a group of 40. Which is very challenging, you know, and WoW was very hard. And so raiding would be like, there was Molten Core, there was Naxxramas, there was AQ, and there was Blackwing. And, you know, raiding was tough because you got better armor, better artifacts, let's say, you know, from the more advanced stages of the actual dungeons themselves, the raids, what we call them. So dungeons would be raids. And, you know, so essentially you had to kind of break into Molten Core, start working your way through that. And then like, as you would get through those boss fights, the gear would start to make up for the lack of, you know, organization and performance of the 40-person team, you know? And each person has to manage all of their resources perfectly, especially, you know, in the end game in the challenging grades. And at the end in WoW, when it was like Naxxramas, most people didn't get a chance to raid that because it was so complicated. It was very, very difficult. And if you weren't in a queue already, then it was even more difficult. You know, so basically, like they did a Polarium, but in a very organized way. You know, in the sense that they released content that was almost impossible to do. And then what the guilds did was we all competed for world first, but the rewards were startlingly good. It was worth the time, you know. But yeah, when I looked at like that sort of play style, you know, I was like, at my age now, with like the adulting task I have to do, I was like, I can't do that anymore. Yeah. But my buddy was like, well, what do you play now? You know, and I was like, I play mobile games. And he was like, oh, I get it. You still have to be the best at games you play, but since you don't have time, now you can just buy your way into it. And I was like, yeah, you nailed it. So sad but true.
That's funny. I forget what caused us to go off on that tangent. What were we talking about?
That's a good question.
That's
a really good question.
I think we were talking about, you know, why I manage my resources the way I do, and then you were like, I'm kind of the same because of my WoW background, which is funny because I never played WoW, and we ended up at kind of a similar place. But I think I'm a little bit more hardcore on the resource management than you are. Yeah,
you know, I don't get the most value out of my account for sure. You know, but at the same time, I mean, it's also challenging to do that when you're making content, you know, because like I have I'm working like a Molly tankard, you know, build right now, and I'm never going to use Molly, you know, like I don't really have any room for Molly, but I see where she's a really great champion for certain players. So, you know, I leveled her up, geared her up, got her masteries up, so I could actually like go in and really show what you can do with her and where you should use her and how you should build her.
Yep.
So, I mean, as soon as you start like just free flowing all of your resources out the window, it's kind of like, why even try to manage these efficiently?
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, that's one of the challenges, at least for, you know, trying to make YouTube videos and whatnot. So
yeah, no, it's definitely a challenge to balance it, and it makes you burn the candle at both ends. One thing I did want to ask you about is other games, like, you know, let's say Diablo Immortal comes out. Are you gonna dive into that? Is there Is there anything you've got your eye on that would really catch you?
Yeah, Darth said it best a while back, but he was like, we're all like in, grad school right now, trying to learn how to be like not terrible content producers, so that when a game that, really shakes things up, like Diablo Immortal comes out, maybe, if we get into it early enough and do good enough content with it, then we can, maybe take off and not have to worry about work anymore. This will be work at that point. Yeah, so I mean, I'm always on the lookout for that. I'm not as excited about Diablo Immortal as most folks are. Unlike you, Diablo was never my game. I tried it quite a lot, and I was really more into the MMOs than that. I would say one that I really have my eye on is 7 Deadly Sins gacha. I think that's going to go really well. I love anime, and 7 Deadly Sins just kind of like, for me, Netflix, grabbed onto that franchise and put it on Netflix, and it was really good character development and the actual characters themselves. And for me, it's kind of interesting because like my son is just as into that show as I am, and he's 8. So normally I don't see like we don't really get like a categorical overlap like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like Dragon Ball. Like an adult and a kid can sit there and be just as geeked out watching Dragon Ball.
Yep.
It doesn't always work that way. So I've seen some videos of the 7 Deadly Sins gacha, and it looks really good. So that one might be one that I jump into.
Is it already out? I haven't even really heard anything.
Yeah, it's out in Korea. I don't know how well it's doing. It's not out in the US yet. So, and I don't know how much you've like looked at this kind of stuff, but it can be very, very challenging. Like a Loon, for instance. Like when a Loon came out, it was already out in Korea for like 6 months or so. So the bilingual content producers, they killed it because, it comes out, all the, English speaking content producers are trying to figure the game out. Well, they've been playing it for 6 months. They already know exactly what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy named K Gaming that does that like really well. He's playing the game in Korean, speaks perfect conversational English, pretty funny dude, just jumps in and says, oh, by the way, this brand new game that you guys just started playing today, like, yeah, I know exactly what you should be doing with it, and you're like, great, because we're over here starting on day one, like, what do I do? And he's already, he's got the spreadsheets, the guides, the list, he's got everything.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that'll be a problem. But with Diablo Immortals, that shouldn't happen. I think it's gonna be a global release.
Yeah, I think so, and Blizzard really needs to hit a home run at some point because they have just been spiraling. I don't know if you follow Blizzard, but they have just been going down the you-know-what tube for the past, like, 2 years. They just can't do anything right. And then this whole China thing, they banned a player that came out in support of Hong Kong and, like, didn't pay him his prize money. And so now they've got people wanting to, like, protest BlizzCon, which is next month. Okay. So Blizzard just can't do anything right. They're just striking out every at bat. So they really need to do something good with Diablo Immortal.
Yeah, I would say if they're doing that poorly, don't expect too much.
Yeah.
But no, I would say the shorter answer to that is, while I'm definitely looking on the forefront for the next game, there's a couple things there. So number one, the group of us, myself, you, Stu, and Darth, we get along really well. ChoseN's obviously the smarter one of the four of us because he finally decided to make a. Wait, you were the first one to make a Discord channel for all of us to talk in, because we'd be sitting there like, "Hey, I just asked Brad about this. He says this," and then it'd be like, "Hold on, let me ask him." Like, "Hey, Brad agreed," and I'm like, it never occurred. Like, let's make a channel for all four of us, and then like. I looked at it the other day and I'm like, oh, that was a good idea.
Now we can all keep in touch
a while ago.
Instead of having to like, okay, Darth said this, Stu said this.
Yeah, but what would be interesting to me, if the next big game comes out, we could all four go over to it. Because none of us are as big as some of the people that are out there, and then in addition to that, some of the games that are not global releases, somebody might have a leg up, but I would go in that direction too, but for me, it's more of I love playing these kind of games, so number one is, the first stress test is it a fun game to play? Number two is, does it have, cool in-game content? Is there, synergies? Is there things that make you think, you usually don't get that until you get to the in-game, and the number three would be like, is it a good business decision? you know, if I want to continue to make content, because while it's a lot of fun to make it, it does, you know, extract pretty much your entire playing experience. You know, the game's not the game for you to play anymore. The game's there for you to come up with ideas to make content. You know, that paradigm shifts. So for me, I'd have to check all three of those boxes, no matter what the game was, and I would be really excited to jump into it and to play it. Epic 7's one that I'm playing now, and honestly, I'll probably start doing content on pretty soon here.
Oh, really?
It's a great game. Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, sometimes you have to beware the contrast. You know, there's a logical fallacy. It's I don't remember what it is. It's not. It might be a straw man fallacy, but basically where, like, you know, just by contrast or juxtaposition, something looks way better than it really is.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And sometimes I wonder, because I mean, there's little things, you know, in Epic 7 that you just like, oh wow, a game actually does that. How cool, you know. But overall, the game is a lot of fun to play. But like, for example, they would do a Gorgorab summoning event, but not with a Gorgorab. They would do it with like a Bad Elf, you know. And then if you summon 21 or 121 shards, you would just get the Bad Elf. Even if you didn't get them, they would just give them to you. Like, okay,
oh, so like a sympathy timer.
Yeah, yeah, little things like that, you know. And you know, I mean, I think I told you this the other day. I haven't. I need to edit the video, do part of it, but I did an interview with Castris, who was the global leaderboard winner for the last tournament. And you know, it was kind of a tough one to do, because, you know, we spent so much time talking about like just the lack of there being a prize or anything at all, you know, for being the winner of the global leaderboard. And then we spent some time kind of like, okay, well, what prize would make you come back and do it and all that? And it's like, yeah, I mean, I can only speculate as to how much he spent, but I would say it's between 4,000 and 5,000 USD. I didn't ask him directly. It's 2,700 shards he opened.
Yeah, man.
And, you know, at the end of all that, you know, sorry, my wife came in again. I sent her a text like 15 minutes ago saying, hey, come close the door. And she just got it. And she was like, the door's closed. I'm like, all right.
can't live with him and can't live without him.
It's married life, man. It's married life. But yeah, you know, something like, you know, even with something like a global leaderboard, like just giving a prize out, you know, that would be awesome. You know, like he kind of jokingly said, he was like, you know, they could send me a t-shirt. You know, I'd be happy with that. It's better than like absolutely nothing. You're like,
yeah, that's something I think we were talking about this last night on stream, and I can't believe it. Like it takes 10 minutes and it costs $20. Like to just do something nice for your players. I can't relate as to why a game developer wouldn't do it when it's free and it costs you. I just don't. It's so easy.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's, you know, I see that a lot in Raid right now. You know, and I think they got to research their competition a little bit more. And if they feel like they know their competition really well, then they need to start to implement some of their strategies. You know, because if you know them well, then write down what they're doing and what you're not doing. You know, and have an honest conversation with yourself. Should I be doing those things? Would my players want me to do those things? You know, and use the content producers, use us to poll people, you know, I mean, to get a read on the community, make a decision, implement some of those changes, and then, you know, go back and look at everything and see how it improves your numbers or you know, affects your numbers, generally speaking. But right now, I don't know what they're doing. You know, it's almost at that point where I've kind of mentally checked out a little bit from, you know, like trying to figure out what they're doing. And now I'm kind of just, you know, like dying on the inside a little bit, but laughing at myself at the same time. Does that make sense? You know, you're like...
No, I'm with you on like getting tired of the whole merry-go-round apology tour. Like every week, it's like at some point, it's not okay to just say, yeah, we're listening to your feedback. Sorry. Like,
yeah,
you know, you can only say that for 6 straight months before you're like, I mean, at some point, you're obviously not listening to feedback. You're just going to do your thing, and you're trying to keep everybody from raging.
Yeah. It's a strange business model, man. You know, hopefully we end up figuring it out. Hopefully they end up figuring it out. But to be honest, I mean, there's still a lot of fun about the game, you know, and I think really what it boils down to is potential. I think we all believe it has an incredible amount of potential. So then the question really starts to become like, did they start, fulfilling some of that potential? We'll see. I like to think the new Hydra boss does that, but I'll tell you this much, right? If the Hydra boss is a flop at the level of Faction Wars, this game will probably die right there.
They can't have another 1 or 2 out of 10. Yeah,
they can't do it. It's got to be like, game-changing content. I mean, the stakes are really high right now for Plarium.
Yeah, in today's day and age, this isn't 1998 where, there's 2 or 3 big-time games. Like, people have options. And, you can't just sit here and do crappy. Or people are going to be like, screw it, I got, 987 other games to choose from.
Yeah, exactly. And there's 2 to 3, if not a month, then every 2 weeks. I mean, there's probably 1 a week gacha games in similar categories that comes out that I at least hear about, and I mean, like a loon, I think the biggest reason I was in a guild called Frozen North, and then basically that entire guild went to go play a loon, and pretty much as a loon works, they all came right back like 2 weeks later. And in that 2-week period, I went to Sin Guilds, which was good for me. It was a good move for, me across the board, to be honest. But, during that period of time, I was like, yeah, this is kind of a good representation. Like, the next good game, while Plarium is sleeping on this a little bit, will be the end of it for sure. If a loon would have been more sustainable, that might have been the end of it, to be honest.
Yeah, they cornered the market on this visual niche, but it's honestly the same type of niche that Diablo fills. Kind of like the medieval, swords, maces, and bows, and the champions look badass, not cartoony. So I wonder if Diablo Immortal, what kind of impact that'll have on Raid if they don't really step up and keep it pounded down.
Is there any like lead time on Diablo Immortal? Or is it TBD? Or
typically with Blizzard, from my experience, I've been a Blizzard gamer since I was young. Typically, in my experience, when they announce something, you are about 18 to 24 months away from release. They announced Diablo Immortal about 11 months ago, so I would say we're somewhere between 6 and 12 months for Diablo Immortal, if I had to guess.
Okay.
Because they announced Overwatch exactly 18 months before release. I think they announced Diablo 3 exactly 18 months before release. They announced Diablo Immortal 11 months ago, so we're looking. But I don't know. It's their first diving into the mobile genre, so it could be different. Yeah. It could be faster. It could be slower. I don't know.
Didn't Bethesda jump into? Because I mean, usually that's like. Yeah, I always kind of lean more towards Bethesda than I did Blizzard for like really good quality games.
Didn't Bethesda try to enter the mobile market and have like a huge flop?
I think they did. Yeah, I think it was a huge flop.
Because wasn't there like Fallout Shelter or something?
They did something off of the Elder Scrolls.
Yeah.
Let's
see if I can find it.
And then they tried to compete with Blizzard on that card game. And those are actually fun.
Hearthstone. Yep.
Yeah, they did Elder Scrolls Legends. Perma and I actually played Elder Scrolls Legends. It was honestly a really good game. I don't know why it didn't take off. I mean, card games are tough. I mean, Magic's held that entire market down for a very long time. And I think the other thing people don't realize is, like the I'm sure people understand the structure of how like the calculus goes into a card game. But creating that takes like a really strong system of like sum zero mathematics. And, I think the guy that invented Magic was like he was a mathematician in some extent, So I don't know if people that develop the games really fully understand how that sum zero math system works,
Oh yeah, it takes a genius to. I've always said I feel confident in my ability to like give input on making a game better or balancing a game, but but designing something from scratch, from ground zero, I don't think people understand the intelligence required to do that from the ground zero.
And that's anything, you know. I mean, a video game as well. I mean, but you know, anything to really, it's part like creative genius, and then the rest of it really is it's self confidence, and people don't realize that. That's the harder bit. You know, it's easy. I don't want to say it's easy to have a vision, right? It's sometimes it's easy to be intoxicated by your own vision, right? And then it's super easy to kind of lock yourself in a room and stand on an island and build out whatever it is that you're going to build out. It's very hard to have the self confidence that what you're building initially is good enough, and then to have the self-confidence to take the feedback very early on to make the changes necessary. That's challenging. And with a card game, it all comes back to the math, you know, whereas at least you don't have to have that mathematical variable. You don't have to have your creativity safeguarded by, I don't even think it's an algorithm, because an algorithm is algebra. I think it's calculus, to be honest, but I'm not a math person.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm no scholar. I'll admit that.
Oh man, but no, most of my math is spreadsheet math. You know, so it's a little bit easier.
Yeah, same. Yeah, we both come from the same finance world, so yeah, it's all about spreadsheets.
Yeah. Like if somebody ends up hitting like a front slash, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that calculus. It's like y'all broke this spreadsheet. Can you get my smart in here and fix this?
Yep.
It's not working. It says error.
Exactly. Well, I guess, yeah, no, it's been a super successful talk, and
yeah, man,
I've really enjoyed your perspective, and I think it was a good episode 1. I hope people will let me know down in the comments on you know, things you'd like to see in future episodes and all that type of stuff. But yeah, as we end here, let people know exactly, you know, where they can find you and how they can, you know, get in touch with your content.
Yeah, it's so my YouTube is youtube.com/Kizzle, and it's Kizzle. My Twitch is a little bit tougher. You might need to link it. But it's Kizzle_Inc., like Kizzle Incorporated, and it's only because I was going to do Kizzle LLC, but then it looks like Eek, you know? Didn't really know what to do there. And then I thought if I did Kizzle S Corp, it looked like Kizzle Scorp. You know what I'm saying? So, like, you know, that's kind of where, like, the business background didn't do me any justice, because I was like, I can't do this because technically it's an LLC, you know? It's not incorporated. I'm not incorporated. And then I was like, all right, I need to calm down a little bit, just INC.
You know, you could have just been Kizzle.
Well, that was taken. Unfortunately, it's a rather popular name at this point, and I don't understand why. I thought I made it up.
I found that out when I found that out when I tried to add you on Skype. I typed in Kizzle, and I was like, okay, never mind.
Yeah, I don't know when it hit like critical mass or something. It's not anything that I did, you know. But yeah, like 10 years ago when I made it up for WoW, you know, I thought it was a pretty safe name, and then lately every time I go to type it in something, it's like username already taken. It's like, well,
I guess that would be a fun ending topic here. Is you know, why did you? We'll tell each other, why did you pick Kizzle as like your gamer tag?
Oh yeah, so that's it's an anticlimactic story, but it's a brief one. So when I played WoW, my initial name was Kalis, and I was writing fiction at the time, and I had a friend of mine that was, you know, kind of mentoring me in writing fiction, tell me that, you know, the KH combination was like something you want to give like a badass, like an evil character, and he had some sort of like what is the damn word? A background to that. Like he traced that to somewhere, and I don't remember what it was. But then he said, you know, an S in any name is really good because it's like a snake. So it's like it creates like a fearful, you know, thing. So like I was like, cool. So I did the KH, added a vowel, and pretty much had Kalis, you know. And then so we're all in WoW, right? And like people do on WoW, we re-rolled on the server. You know, back in the day, you had to choose Alliance or Horde. You couldn't, like, all this willy-nilly flip back and forth stuff. You couldn't do that back in the day. You know, so we were all Horde. We wanted to go Alliance. And we re-roll Alliance. And everybody's like, back then, like, you know, Snoop Dogg was really popular. I'm, like, aging myself right now, you know. I'm definitely aggressively in my 30s, you know. And, you know, he was doing the Izzle thing. So we were like, let's all make Izzle names. You know,
it's funny. That was going to be my guess. I was going to be like, it sounds like somebody, Kizzle sounds like somebody whose name is like Kyle or something, and they're going to make a rap name. Like, yo, I'm Kizzle.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. It's exactly what happened. We literally had a guild called like the Izzle, and it was like 60 or 70 of us, and we were doing really well on our server and stuff. So it's kind of funny. Like people would say, yeah, if anybody has the name, whatever Izzle, like invite them to your group, they're probably going to be really good. And so that was cool. But then after that, like I stuck with it, and then maybe a year later, I ran into a guy in a different game, and he was like, "Hey, where you Kizzle from?" I think Dentarg or New Barak server, wherever I was, Tichondrius at the time. And I was like, "Yeah," and he was like, "I'm so and so." And at that point, I was like, "I should stick with this name because I play like I might run into folks that I played with, in other games and other servers and other things." And I think I've only ran into maybe 2 or 3, but at least you found like a place really quickly where you're like, okay, cool, I know that person. I can go join their guild, or maybe they can give me some of their resources or something. I can convince them to give me free stuff.
You have a nice little underground communication pathway.
Yeah. So that's where it came from. But what about you? Where did Chosen Brad come from?
So as a kid, my 2 favorite movies were Mortal Kombat and The Matrix. And both of them had like a chosen one. The Matrix had Neo, and Mortal Kombat had Liu Kang. So both my 2 favorite movies had a chosen one. So I'm like 11 years old. I'm like, I'm gonna call myself Chosen. so that's how that came. And I just never changed it. When you start calling yourself that when you're 12 on StarCraft 1 and Diablo 1, and then it just kind of sticks with you because everybody knows you as that, and it becomes more work to change at that point.
I think you said it well there. It becomes more work to change. I think that's why I kind of stuck with it. And then once you hit like the 3rd or 4th game, you're like, might as well just stick with this.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to sit here and do YouTube videos. Hey, what's up? This is so and so, and you might know me as Chosen from back in the day. Like,
yeah. No, I honestly, like when my channels pick up a little bit, I asked my wife. I was like, should I change it from Kizzle to like something else? I don't know, because it's like. It dates me really hard. Like you're like, oh, okay, that guy was alive when Snoop Dogg was, writing, top 40 records. And she was like, no, you've stuck with it this long. Why get rid of it? And I was like, okay, and I just kind of rolled with it. So
yeah, it's gonna be kind of your brand, whether you like it or not at that point.
Yeah, and the thing I always kind of told myself was Perma and I are really close, right? But Perma's name, if you shorten it, is Perm.
Yep.
Right, so like it's not that bad to be Kizzle, because then people just call you Kiz. And so like I always tell people, like Perm decided to start later in life. He had a midlife crisis, and he decided to start specializing in 60 to 90-year-old women's hairstyles. And he named himself after it, Perms. And he prefers it if you call him that, Perms. And he hates that, by the way. But for me, it's like at least not that bad. It's just Kiz.
Yeah,
and I can live with that.
Yeah, I can.
So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Yeah, no, that it was a fun conversation, and like I said, definitely guys, go check out Kizzle. He's one of the better content creators in the mobile genre, in my opinion, and I was excited to have him on as my first guest. So yeah. Well, go. That's it for us, and take it easy, everybody. Thanks for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.
Later, guys.